Someone posted a comment in my Facebook group that they went to see a therapist about their binge eating and they were completely dismissed. The therapist said to them, "Oh, everybody thinks they have a binge eating problem nowadays," as if the title or the label of binge eating somehow is being used as some kind of excuse. What was she thinking? That people are just hiding behind some binge eating label because actually they could just take control if they wanted to? I think it's quite hard for somebody who's not experienced binge eating to appreciate what it's actually like. It's hard to explain the level of distress and how out of control you might feel. So I've got a little bit of help today. I've invited 10 people along to share their experiences in little snippets of what it was like for them to struggle with binge eating.
It would often start as feeling like a build-up of emotions that I didn't know what to do with. And then it would hit a point of what felt like complete emotional overwhelm.
Binges for me were like when I was having a dream that I was driving a car and I realized that when I hit the brake, my foot would just kind of keep moving and that there was no resistance. And I was slowly but surely understanding that I was not going to be able to stop the car. It was like being chased by something and realizing that it was going to overtake me, and the binge would eventually be just like the wave crashing over me.
There would be a lot of planning, preoccupation, thinking about, dreaming about, anticipation of the binge in advance. And that would often be sometimes hours, days in advance. I'd be thinking about it before it actually happened. Then I would go to the supermarket, often buy a whole load of food, take it home. That whole stage was very sort of thrilling, anticipatory, but also a sense of dread, kind of knowing what was coming.
I was white knuckling my way through the day, trying to keep control. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time. No matter how hard I tried, the urge always came back.
I remember in the depths of like my darkest years, standing in the basement of the house I was living in and absolutely mainlining Hummingbird cupcakes. And if you know Hummingbird, it's like a really expensive bakery. And I just was like stuffing these red velvet cupcakes into my house because there was so much pain that I could not hold in my body. I could not contain.
And that's when I'd get this sensation of being like pulled into some kind of like vortex that had this power that was really strong and this force that was bigger than me. And no matter how much I tried to resist that pull, I would slowly get pulled into it. And as that happened, I could feel my awareness and my consciousness kind of lessening, and this like hazy fogginess setting over me, this real dark, heavy energy. And then when I first took a bite of whatever I was binging on, I get this momentary like high, this surge of energy. And then after that, it would quickly turn into a complete checking out, like a numbness of any emotions, any awareness. Like I would be in a trance-like state.
I never checked out during a binge. I never felt like I wasn't there for it. Instead, it was almost like I was trapped inside of myself, watching my body perform the motions and knowing that as much as I was like screaming inside that I wanted to stop, there was this part of me that was in charge, and I knew how helpless I was against that part. So it felt like at once relief that I was helpless because I knew it was going to happen. And there was a part of me that needed it to, but it was also an incredible amount of despair, frustration, anger, and defeat.
Little did anybody know that certainly at the weekends and a lot of evenings, I would find myself eating uncontrollably, eating all of the foods that I had judged and were saying were really unhealthy and bad for us and all of these things. But I was eating them, just often in secret, often in my car. On the way home from work, I could stop off at the petrol station and buy all the bars of chocolate and have them all eaten before I ever got home.
I felt trapped. I knew what was happening, but I felt powerless to stop it. It was like my body took over and I could only watch.
The years that I struggled with binge eating were some of the worst years of my life because it felt like I was living a double life. There was the version of me who could move through the world, go to work, socialize with friends, go for meals out, and not overthink it, not look at the menu too much, just have a very lovely time. That's how it looked from the outside. But what was going on inside is that the second that I would leave that meal, I would then start to calculate everything that I ate and think about how I can undo the damage tomorrow. And then, bizarrely, a voice in my head will come up and say, now I want you to stop at a petrol station and buy as many Dairy Milk Mint crisps as you possibly can. And I want you to eat them all right here, right now, in the car, and then dump the wrappers at the next petrol station.
Despair is the word that comes to mind when I remember it. There was a lot of despair. Being there, sitting in my truck, outside 7-Eleven at 9 p.m. at night with just a big bag of empty food wrappers, almost crying with frustration, and this despair of like, I don't know how many times I've told myself this isn't happening again, and yet here we are. It's happening again.
I used to stuff myself as full as possible with food so that I could get rid of it. So my joy, if you like, was the relief I would feel from the lack of pressure, and the food represented pressure, like a kind of before and after narrative. Binging was always secretive and like a kind of feral, out of control act. I felt deeply ashamed. And I binged on everything. It was kind of how I ran my life. And yes, sometimes I'd take myself to the point of life or death just to see if I could. I guess I would then go home, I would binge on the food, probably be eating some of it in the car on the way home. I would eat to the point I was really, really uncomfortably full.
And then when the binge ended, I'd suddenly get this real hyper awareness of what I had just done, and the feelings of guilt and shame and disgust and panic that someone else could find out what I'd done would set in.
Struggling with binge eating is like living a double life, and it's incredibly distressing.
I knew that what was waiting for me at the end of it was always going to be regret and shame. And yeah, that defeat feeling was really strong.
And then when I came out the other side, not only was I thrown into shame and self-disgust, but this sinking feeling of what is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this to myself? And those feelings were all encompassing, and I felt like I was drowning in them.
It made me second guess so many things about myself. And I felt really despairing at that point in time when I was struggling with this.
I would enjoy binging in the very early stages, but very quickly afterwards, I would feel intense self-loathing, distress, upset, and vow I would never to do it again until I did.
There really probably isn't a behaviour around food that I have not done while I was in the depths of binge eating. Like, I've done everything from, throwing my food in the bin in the hopes that I wouldn't eat it, and I've gone back into the bin and taken it back out. And what I made that mean about me at that time was that I'm somebody that is just totally lacking in discipline and motivation, that I was self-sabotaging, and that essentially I was a fraud. Because even though I had all of the information, I knew nutrition inside out, I knew exactly what I needed to be doing, and yet I could do it for a certain period of time, usually a couple of days, and that was about it. It would all blow up in my face, and I would feel like such a failure, like such a fraud.
And for me, the shame, it wasn't just about the binging. It was about my appetite and how food felt bigger than me. I was so deeply ashamed of how I acted around food, and I couldn't be trusted around food, and I had to constantly monitor myself out of fear that I would lose control again.
I guess the hardest thing about the binging was letting go of the kind of mentality and finding some kind of middle ground.
I want you to know that binge eating and compulsive overeating are our best attempt at the time that we're doing it to regulate ourselves, to support ourselves, and to help ourselves manage pain. And one of the things to remember about binge eating is that it's very functional at the time we're doing it. We're doing our absolute best to help ourselves manage in situations that feel untenable and so painful. And there is so much hope for recovery and freedom when we really have space to go into our pain, when we're supported to deal with our trauma.
It did take me a long time to come to the realization that actually I wasn't to blame, that all of these diets that I was on were essentially making my body feel really, really unsafe. And I never knew it at the time, but my body was really working hard to protect me. And I do think sometimes things have to get really bad before we can maybe make a change. And for me, that didn't happen until my mid-30s. This was 20 years of binge eating. But to anybody watching this that maybe feels like there is no hope, there absolutely is hope. It's so possible to live a life free from binge eating.
And obviously, I hold a lot of hope on recovery. I see people healing their relationship with food. And if all was hopeless, these 10 people you just heard from, whose job it is to help people recover from binge eating, they would all be burned out. We would all be burned out if we were trying to help people that couldn't be helped. And my desire for this video is to share resources. There is a lot of really good recovery content out there, and it's becoming harder and harder to find because the algorithms don't like it. How many other recovery channels are there on YouTube that have gained much traction? Not many. So these people you've just heard from, a lot of them have podcasts, they have social media accounts, and they are creating content that can help you for free. So if you check out the description below, I'm going to list everybody you've just heard from and provide links to their resources as well. And of course, I have a few hundred videos on my YouTube channel about how to recover. You can also work with me in groups or individually. Also got a course. I've got a course coming out, intuitive eating course, if you're interested in learning about that. And if nothing else, I just really hope that this video helped you to see that you are not alone in your experiences and you're on a path that many people have trod before. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.